So I was thinking to myself this morning, social media marketing is just like carp fishing. And if you've never been carp fishing before, let me let me explain why. Firstly, when you're fishing for carp, they're not easy to catch. Anybody that tells you that they are is talking bollocks. I've spent years trying to catch carp, and I've caught a handful. Now, what I don't mean is, fish under £10. I'm talking about the 20 pounders, because arguably you don't get to a 20-pound carp by getting caught often. Now, we do with carp fishing. There's a catch and release policy. So the principle here is that whenever a carp does get caught, we put them back. And I think that the carp learns. I think the carp learns that to evade your tactics the next time. And that's not dissimilar than social media marketing. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is social media marketing, or organic social media marketing, that doesn't cost anything to put out there. But I think when you apply the principles of carp fishing, maybe it starts to make a little bit of sense. So firstly, before you start any social media marketing, you need to understand your avatar. You need to understand your niche. And look, check out my previous videos on that topic if we're not quite there yet. But the first thing you need to understand is clearly who you're looking to help. And knowing that will then start to help you apply the next principles. And effectively, once you know who you want to help, you need to know where they are. So in terms of carp fishing, there's no point going fishing if that particular pond that you're going to that day has a history of no bites. It becomes really difficult. So the principle behind this is we want to catch a fish. So it makes more sense to speak to speak to people, Google local ponds, get some feedback, do some research on the ponds and the lakes where the fish are biting. And that you can absolutely apply to your social media. There are so many different avenues, from Spotify to Google Plus to Clubhouse now, that you need to understand where your audience is, where they're spending most of their time, but ultimately where are they biting. Once you understand that, there's a couple of things that you might want to understand about some of the platforms. Instagram, for example, we know that has more of a younger demographic that tune in. 25 to 34-year-olds tend to be the highest demographic, followed by 18 to 25. But arguably, if your audience and your avatar is 45 plus, then not many of them are on Instagram. So you're wasting your time in that particular pond. What do we know about Facebook? Well, we know that in that same demographic, we've seen a decline in Facebook users, certainly with regards to the younger demographic. However, with older people, you find that Facebook has seen an increase. So if your market is of the older generation, then that's where you want to be doing your marketing. Bait up well in advance of the session. So with regards to carp fishing, the really successful anglers will bait up a particular area, often for weeks, certainly days, sometimes months before they'll put a hook in the water. So what we're doing in that particular effort, I suppose, is you're encouraging the fish to trust that is a safe source of food. And then we're going to encourage the fish to come back. Not just one, we want multiples of fish to be able to go back to that particular spot, feed comfortably, and understand that they're not going to get a hook in their mouth. And that's the same principle with regards to social media marketing. You want your audience to trust you. You want your audience to rely on your content. You want to encourage more and more people to be able to come and consume your content in a safe way. without effectively getting a hook in their mouth. So baiting up well in advance is probably something that we all maybe need to spend a bit more time understanding, because with regards to social media, that can actually take years. And when we're trying to build a PT business, the tendency and the instinct is to start to post content about, I'm a PT now, this is what I'm doing, I'm looking for 10 people to take part in this, that, and the other. Look, everybody's doing that now, and all it does is push people away because we're used to it. We don't feel safe, so we go and find somewhere else to feed effectively. So encourage people to come back again and again to a safe environment effectively by giving them great content that's engaging, that's useful to them, and doesn't have any sales messages. And as I say, that can take months and potentially years. When you do get a bite, don't rip that rod so hard that you pull the hook out of the mouth. Reel it in nice and slow, under control. And there's a couple of things here. What you're trying to do as well is one, you want to control the fish onto the bank. And ultimately, when you put that fish back, you don't want it to have had such a horrendous experience in terms of getting caught that it is that it avoids food and any type of bait for months and months, because ultimately somebody else wants to catch that fish. So be respectful in terms of the way you reel your fish in. So same thing with regards to your social media. When you do get a bite, have such a great process behind what you do, so that when you do get a bite, the next stage is, maybe it's a form that they need to fill in. Then once that prospect at this stage is filled in the form, then it becomes a nice welcoming phone call from yourself, and then potentially you feed them into a face-to-face consultation, and then you give them a great service in terms of either a complimentary PT session, and then you do a great job in terms of presenting your product, and that product, that presentation ultimately ends in a really good sale. And that member, that client now goes away and tells 2, 3, 4, 20 of their friends what a great service that it was, and they come back. And ultimately, if they don't join for whatever reason, they still have such a great service that they go and tell other people how much you looked after them, and ultimately that will encourage more people to come to you and effectively get caught. So be consistent. Consistency is king with regards to social media marketing, and certainly consistency with fishing, going back to that same spot, going back to that same area, doing the same things, because they do work. If you boxed off 1, 2, and 3, then you know that what you're doing is right. So being consistent will eventually reap you the reward. When it goes wrong is when you effectively, have built a small audience and you're not consistent. So, for example, you commit to running a Q&A on a Thursday night, and you build a small audience that people are coming back to you now every Thursday, but you're only getting 1s and 2s. And one Thursday you decide, I'm not going to bother. And then the next Thursday you decide to do it and nobody turns up. So, being consistent and understanding that the amount of time that this is genuinely going to take is key. So consistency is a massive piece. Varying your bait. So maybe in contrast to the previous point in terms of consistency, varying your bait is really important, because it doesn't take too long before that fish eventually gets sick of that particular food source and moves on to find something else. Not dissimilar than if you gave me chicken and rice to eat for more than probably 6 meals in a row before I'm onto something else. It's the same with your social media, that varying the content that you deliver, so that it's not literally pushing the same message in front of your clients' faces about, calorific deficit. It has to be engaging. It has to be a source that it's interesting and adds value to your prospects. So you know, the great social media sites or Facebook groups, etc., have content that's got nothing to do with fitness, and it's a varied content plan. Possibly not something that literally just repeats week on week. You know, it doesn't have to be Motivation Monday every Monday. You know, maybe it's a monthly plan, or maybe it's certainly a fortnightly plan, which gives you enough variety in terms of content to attract lots of different people to your business and ultimately your audience. Same with fishing. And then number 6, and the final point, is be patient. Fishing is all about patience. As I said to you before, and my mates will probably are still laughing at me, to be fair, that I spent probably 4 or 5 years chasing carp, and I've caught a handful, but it took patience. It took understanding that it's a process. It took understanding that I was actually doing everything right, but lots of different circumstances come into play. So enjoy the process, and if you enjoy the process, I guarantee you the results will come. Look, if you need any help, give me a shout. That's what I do.